Hello, everyone. How are you guys doing today? Cal Sahota here from the HeroX team. Looks like we have still a few people trickling in, so we'll get started in just a few seconds. All right, fantastic. Looks like we have a really good crowd. Firstly, thanks everyone for joining us for our webinar today. Just a couple of really quick housekeeping items before we dive into the webinar itself. Our webinar is scheduled for anywhere from 30 to 35 minutes. The presentation portion typically takes about 25 minutes or so. If any questions occur for you during the presentation, we invite you to message them into the chat. You can message them to everyone. You can message them just to the host and panelists, however you feel most comfortable, and we'll address them at the very end during the Q&A. We will also be sending you a copy of the deck as well as a link to this recording. So don't worry about taking notes. Just be really present to what it is we're chatting about today. And lastly, we will also be including in our follow-up email a request for feedback on this webinar. So if there's any feedback you have, it takes literally just a few seconds, 3 to 4 questions. We love getting feedback. All right, so let's get started. So quick introduction. My name is Cal Sahota, as I mentioned. I'm the VP of Possibilities with the HeroX team. I come from a very traditional background in business, you guys, 25 years in financial services space. I was an executive with an insurance company, doesn't get any more traditional than that. A financial advisor. I worked in banking for bulk of my career. I was introduced into this space just over 3 years now by our CEO, Christian Cottaccini. I had the pleasure of connecting with people literally all over the world, talking to them about their crowdsourcing projects, supporting them and getting them set up on our platform, on the social network, creating their very own crowd. Absolutely love what I do. And I'm physically located in beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia. So on to more interesting things. So let's dive into the presentation. For our agenda today, the presentation today is really designed to support you in getting an understanding of why crowdsourcing should matter in your world and how to leverage it to create value for your business and for your brand. Specifically, we'll start off with, as I mentioned, why should I care about crowdsourcing? The future of business. We'll give you a bit of an overview of HeroX and as it relates to the social network, and how simple and easy it is to get started. And as I mentioned, at the close of the presentation, we'll take some questions. So crowdsourcing matters, and you'll hear me say this throughout the presentation, only as it relates to the success of your business. It's really just that simple. You know, oftentimes you hear, new buzzwords or new things that are trending, and you're not always clear as to how it should relate to you. But if you think about it in that perspective, it makes everything a lot easier. Takes it out of the conceptual, if you will. So I think a great place to start is to really just to cover off the simplicity of what it is and how it actually works. So quite plainly, it starts off with you broadcast an open call to the crowd. You invite them to submit their ideas. It's done in a very, very brand-friendly, very risk-friendly way. We call that hosting a challenge. From there, the crowd then submits their solutions or their ideas. The organization vets the solution, and then the organization then quite simply selects and awards the solution or solutions which best meet their needs. It's really just that simple. So crowdsourcing really, as it occurs for me, is quite simply just a business tool. So when you solve business issues with crowdsourcing versus traditional business, 4 big things that really show up for me are these 4 key points. Firstly, you get exactly what you're looking for. So how that works is this: when you create and launch your challenge, you very clearly articulate exactly what you're looking for. So when the crowd comes to compete, they're clear in what you're solving for. So you're not going to get a variation or version of what you want. You're going to get the exact solution that you're looking for. There's no delays. How often do we run projects where, deadlines get pushed out? I don't know, maybe you're in manufacturing, you're waiting on a part, or maybe somebody wasn't feeling well. Deadlines get pushed out all the time. But when you create and launch a challenge, you're very clearly articulated at the start of the challenge exactly how long you're going to be running your challenge for. So the crowd knows that the submissions are going to close by X date. So they know exactly when they have to submit their ideas. So again, there's no delays in deadlines. You won't go over budget. right? And this is a common issue in business. With this particular approach, again, when you launch the challenge, you very clearly define exactly what the prize purse is. So what the solution is worth to you. You say that up front, it's right on your URL, it says it very clearly. The second part of it is the operational cost of actually running the challenge, which is also very clear to you up front. So there's no surprises, there's no overages. And lastly, and again, you'd be hard pressed to find this in any business model, but you only pay for success. I mean, keep in mind that we have a close to 90% success rate, but that said, if by chance the crowd, doesn't actually find your solution, you simply don't award. It's a contest, right? So if somebody doesn't present you with what you're looking for, you don't award the prize. So when, you take a bit of a step back and you look at these 4 key points, I mean, doesn't crowdsourcing just make really good business sense? It's the same spend. I mean, you have money right now earmarked, whether it be, for tactical issues or strategic issues. The money's already there. It's just a question of, will you use traditional business methods to solve, or will you use crowdsourcing? So it's the same spend. Keeping up with change. So keeping up with change is critical in ensuring the success and resilience of your company and your brand. The very foundation of what we're looking for right now oftentimes is shifting beneath us. I love this slide. I mean, it's a little bit old, but I just find it really powerful. So the average half-life of a business has dropped from 30 to just 5 years, from 1984 to 2014. The rate of change that most large organizations were formed in isn't the same rate of change that they're dealing with today. And you guys probably feel this, probably every single day. Everything seems to be moving faster and faster, quicker and quicker. And you can see the impact is very real. Blockbuster and Kodak are 2 household brand names that I personally grew up with. They no longer exist. If you can't innovate and shift with the tide, you're gonna run risks. This is another pretty shocking stat, particularly since Fortune 500 companies are huge, large, established brands. 52% of the Fortune 500 firms are gone since 2000. That's pretty significant. I mean, keep in mind some of them are from mergers and acquisitions, but nevertheless, 52% is a pretty significant number. So is it really the future? I don't know. Let's take a quick look. So crowdsourcing is really everywhere. The Ansari X Prize was a challenge which uncovered a technology to allow for private space travel. Now, some of you may or may not have made the connection, but Richard Branson eventually purchased this technology. That's where Virgin Galactic came from. And the more you look, the more you're going to see, organizations leveraging Crowd. Kraft has been using it for years for content. Deloitte's been bringing it up in their consulting services. This is actually a screenshot of a really great white paper that they did. And this, I'm sure this is a fun one. Doritos did a Super Bowl ad. And Lego. I mean, Lego sourcing Crowd for new ideas for Lego sets. But not only that, once they get the new ideas for the Lego sets, they then crowdsource the actual designers who build them. So they're using it on both ends. And here's another really public example of crowdsourcing, and I'm sure most of you are very familiar with Elon Musk. He likes the idea of Hyperloop, which is like a new transportation, disruptive innovation, if you will. He's crowdsourcing his entire startup. So how does HeroX fit into all of this? So when you look at it quite simply, HeroX is quite simply the social network for crowdsourcing. So let's do a bit of a deeper dive and see what that actually looks like. So firstly, HeroX is simply a platform which enables you to run your crowdsourcing projects. It's a turnkey platform giving you absolutely everything you need to launch your challenge, to run your challenge, all the way out to announcing winners, even communicating with your community and crowd. Our platform is over 5 years old now, and in my humble opinion, what makes it super amazing is that after every successful challenge, we debrief with our clients. And as excited as we are to hear about what didn't work, we're actually more excited to hear about what didn't work. So it's in that learning and in that listening that we've really applied a lot of the improvements to the features and the functionality of the platform. So in a way, it's designed by you, for you. And the other quick thing to point out is, Although it's incredibly powerful, very robust, it's also really simple and intuitive to use. Now, I'm not going to get into too much detail on the features of the platform itself. However, I will point out that one of the distinctions with our platform is that it's a pay-for-success model. If you don't receive any submissions to your challenge, we will refund you your full platform fee. If you receive submissions, but weren't able to select one that really fit your needs, we will then refund you 50% of your platform fee. And that's a key distinction with our platform. And obviously there's other platforms out there. So HeroX is a two-sided marketplace, and how that shows up for us is this. I know we focused a little bit on the sponsor side, or the brand, those who actually want to launch challenges. It's primarily to support you in understanding where crowdsourcing potentially could fit in your everyday. But that said, the other side of the coin would be those who then come to compete. So you have the sponsors who seek the solutions, and then you have the innovators, or as we like to lovingly refer to them as our heroes, who actually then come to submit their ideas. And right now our community of innovators or heroes or solvers, there's so many terms used in the industry, are over 100,000. I love this slide. So when you look at the crowdsourcing landscape, it's growing exponentially year over year. I mean, it's not something that you can kind of look past, ignore, and say this might not be for you, or that it's a fad. The other thing which really occurred for us is the space is really quite fragmented, right? It's difficult to kind of know where to go, what platform to use. And secondly, you ran a challenge on platform X, then you ran a challenge on platform Y. What happens to your community? And your community being the people who then competed in these specific challenges. It would close out with the challenge, right? Like say 100 people competed in one of your challenges, you selected a winner, and then the 100 people would, disperse, and that'll be the end of it. So there's no really one place where you can actually build your crowd. And that's really where the shift for us came from. So moving away from being just a platform to also then positioning ourselves as the social network for crowdsourcing. Let's talk a little bit more about what that means. So think to the social networks that you're familiar with. There's the Facebooks and the LinkedIns of the world. You have your own home page or your main page. At HeroX, you have your own crowdsourcing page. Every challenge you post, it lives on your crowdsourcing page. Here's an example of NASA's. This is actually a bit of an older slide, but I mean, they've got multiple challenges actually that they run with us. You can customize your home page. You can add graphics, you can even add a video, however you want your brand to be represented on your page. And just like Facebook and LinkedIn, you build, grow, and communicate with your very own community off of your personal crowdsourcing page. The more you crowdsource, the larger your community is going to get. Just like when you started LinkedIn, you probably started off with a handful of connections. Now you're probably up to a few hundred. So now that you got the basics of how crowdsourcing works, we talked a little bit about how HeroX fits into the picture as the platform and as a social network. It's always great to just walk through a quick case study, because talking about stuff conceptually, doesn't work as well as actually when you see it, real time. So CocaCola, we have the pleasure of working with them. They're one of our clients. They were looking for a brand new sweetener. And they actually took a couple of different approaches. They ran 2 challenges with us. And I'm going to speak to the one, the Sweet Story Challenge, because they recently announced winners. So you can see here exactly what it is they were looking for. So they invited the crowd to submit their ideas, their anecdotes, personal videos of, their tried and tested true methods of naturally sweetening food. It could be something that their grandmother grew in the backyard, somewhere in Brazil, whatever the case may be. So they asked them to create a story around it. And here's what the prize value was. It was $100,000 in prizes. And the way they divvied that up was their initial intention was to award $20,000 for 5 winners. But the interesting thing is, once they actually got all the submissions, they found the quality to be so high that they couldn't actually agree on the top 5, so they actually wound up awarding 6, but that was by their own choice. So they actually, in the end, ultimately awarded $120,000. And you can see here, I've been talking about community. So on that particular challenge, they had 1,300 people following it. And then out of that 1,300, just over 1,000 people competed and submitted ideas. Over 74 countries were represented. Pretty powerful, right? So, I mean, when you're looking for ideas, you stay within North America more than likely. I mean, if you are from North America, maybe there's a handful of consultants and people that you're working with. But imagine sourcing the entire crowd. Imagine tapping into that creativity, those unique ideas that live in the minds of somebody potentially clear across the world. And here you can see where the winning submissions came from. So, from Mexico, Bolivia, Australia. I mean, you see all the different countries listed there. CocaCola was actually really impressed with the results. They actually wound up releasing a really great YouTube video. I think it's just about 3 minutes in length. That you see the executives talk about how they've been using, crowdsourcing to really build brand and to really connect through with their brand enthusiasts. It actually features some of the actual winners. So it's just a really great 3-minute watch. You know what? There's tons of projects, you guys. I mean, there's so many that you literally can't keep track of them. You can get started on your own. So oftentimes there's projects that are started that even us as a team, we're not even aware of all of them unless you're one of our platform experts. But if you go onto the site, you search under challenges, you can do a search, you can break it up by category to see kind of this really neat stuff we have on there. As well, if you're interested, we've also put together, a quick, I think it's about an 11-minute screencast of some additional case studies. So if you're interested in that, more than pleased to send that through to you in one of our follow-up emails. All right, so I've taken you through the basics of how crowdsourcing works, how HeroX fits into the landscape. I've offered you an example of a successful crowdsourcing project. Now I'm going to invite you to take a little bit of a step back and look at the logic behind tapping into the creativity of the world. This is one of my favorite quotes by Einstein. You can't solve problems by using the same kind of thinking we used when we created them, right? So the whole idea being, and how that shows up for me is by embracing the idea that you don't know where your solution lives. You unlock creativity, which otherwise is limited in traditional business. Again, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know somebody, like I said, I've mentioned already, clear across the globe could present you with a solution potentially at a fraction of the cost that you think you might need to spend. The idea of spending the same money and unlocking all this creativity, it just makes such great sense. I also love this slide. Again, the invitation is to take a step back and look at all the ways the world's connected virtually. I mean, just look at all of this. This is where the world lives. So why not take advantage of all this traffic? With over 3 billion people connected over the world wide web, the possibilities, the ideas, the potential solutions are endless. I wanted to share one other example with you guys. Now, this prize was awarded back in 2011. It's a little bit old, but the results and some of the facts behind it, it really is compelling to me. So, particularly when I was first introduced into the space. So you guys are all familiar with, or some of you may be familiar with the oil spill a number of years ago in the Gulf of Mexico, and the then wife of the Google chairman, Wendy Schmidt, who's a philanthropist and activist in the environment. She asked the question, look, how quickly are we able to clean up the oil? And she reached out to scientists, she reached out to experts in the space, and everybody came back to her and said, 1,100 gallons per minute, Wendy, is the best that we have. That's the best technology. I mean, granted, it's 20 years old, but there really isn't anything else out there. So, Wendy didn't accept that. So what she did is she launched a challenge for $1.4 million. And as we just talked about, this is the problem that she had identified. So the challenge that she put out to the world was to create an oil recovery rate of 2,500 gallons per minute. So she wanted to more than double what was there now. And she wanted the oil recovery efficiency to be at least 70% oil to water collected. So let's see what some of the results were. 250 teams competed worldwide. End result, 4,670, more than a 400% increase over the industry's best of 1,100 gallons per minute. And the efficiency, she wanted 70, she got almost 90%. But you know what? The most powerful part of the story isn't just the results, but that one of the top 10 competitors was a tattoo parlor owner out of Vegas. You literally have no idea where your solution lives and who has it. There is no conceivable way that they would have, referenced his ideas in a traditional business environment. He would never have had the opportunity to contribute and make an impact and make a real difference in the world, right? I mean, can you imagine Wendy Schmidt saying, oh, okay, well, this is all great. That's great, Mr. Scientist. I'm just going to now fly down to Vegas and see what the tattoo parlor owners think. Would never have happened. So we've been talking about, tapping into the creativity of the crowd, of the world, and oftentimes, companies will say that they're global, but listen, we are absolutely global. And having a global presence is critical, particularly when you're sourcing the crowd. When you take a look here, behind each of these pins is not just a innovator, there's multiple innovators. So these are just the different locations represented by each pin. Pretty powerful. So, when you look at the impact of actually crowdsourcing, I think it's also important to acknowledge the overall positivity that it's created. As a potential innovator, you could be some poor kid in a rural village in Africa or Bangladesh or India or Pakistan or wherever the case may be. Or you could be someone who lives down the street, who's absolutely brilliant, but simply did not get the opportunity to go to a post-secondary school or let alone an Ivy League school, right? So, so there's certain types of positions in the workforce that you just simply aren't eligible to apply to. Secondly, as a business owner, I wanted to solve a business issue. I would naturally go to those who I'm most familiar with, right? Asking them to provide me with some options for vendors, etc. That's traditional business. But by crowdsourcing, like I said, you're tapping into the creativity and look at everything that it opens up for you. So it really levels the playing field. And that's something for me personally that's really impactful. So long as you have connectivity to the internet, you can compete in a challenge. And, for those of you who are looking for solutions, you're no longer limited. You're spending the same money and you're getting amazing results. Here's some quick facts. I'm certainly not going to go through each of them in detail. I will say that, as I mentioned, right now, actually I need to update this slide, our crowd is just over 100,000. So we have over 100,000 people that are actively on our site looking for looking for problems to solve. You see here our gross market value. Some of our social media numbers are actually more than double some of our competitors. And the other thing I wanted to point out is, when you look at some of the brands that we're working with, CocaCola, NBC, Boeing is sponsoring a challenge. We're actually now just recently working with the NFL. You really, when you stand back and you take a look, when you have large brand names actually crowdsourcing actively as just a part of their, business model, it's something that you really should take a look at. And the other thing I'm going to mention as well is when you actually go onto our website, as much as, the only reason I'm pointing out some of the larger brand names is for sense of familiarity. But, a lot of our, a good percentage of our clients are actually just entrepreneurs or small or mid-sized companies. So how would you get started? It's pretty simple. So you start with a simple shift of how things show up for you. How this may be occurring for you is this. This is all great, Cal. This is awesome. Makes really good sense. But I don't really have anything that I would use it for. How it will eventually occur for you is this. I have a problem that I'm wanting to solve for. Let's HeroX it. No different than when you're looking for a quick answer for something. What do you say now? Let's Google it. So when you need a business issue resolved, as I mentioned, going forward, it's just going to be let's HeroX it. It's just really that simple. Listen, Facebook at one time was considered trendy or maybe even a fad. Same as social media as a whole. But it wasn't, was it? It was actually shifting the way we do business. Social media and digital marketing have put the marketing industry literally on its ear. It's no longer the new way to market. It is the way to market. So paying attention to the shifts in business is super critical for both the survival as well as the success of your brand and your business. So I invite you now to kind of take a bit of a step back and look to see what you're up to. It's literally anything that's in front of you that you're stuck on or that you need a solution for. I've listed some of the solutions out here, but I mean, it's certainly not limited to this. The possibility of challenge concepts is as endless as the issues themselves. Where you see a problem, the invitation is to, look for the opportunity for a crowd-sourced solution. And we've talked about a number of, one of the biggest powers of sourcing crowd is going outside of your space. That's oftentimes where disruption comes from. If someone offers you a solution that drives your business from 20% year over year to 100% year over year, look at the possibilities that are available to you. I mean, even if you just look at the example of Wendy Schmidt, I mean, I'm certainly not suggesting that, every problem that you solve for disruption is going to be 400% increase like the challenge she actually hosted. But nevertheless, it's the possibility that's amazing. So the use of the HeroX platform, super simple. Two very simple options for you. Option number one is pretty straightforward. The HeroX platform is so easy. You go out of the site, you click on create a challenge, and away you go. It's simple, it's intuitive. The platform guides you to asking you all the right questions. You iterate on the content until it feels right. Then you simply click publish and away you go. We offer you a full knowledge base right on the actual site itself. We also give you interaction with our platform experts for any questions you may have or any areas you may feel stuck. Many of our clients, for that reason, are actually taking the DIY approach. That said, if you don't have the bandwidth, or perhaps your challenge concept might occur maybe as a little bit complicated, or maybe you're crowdsourcing for the very first time, we can absolutely support you as well, and that's option number two. You can augment your experience on the platform with some of our optional consulting services. I mean, it certainly isn't our business model, you guys, to upsell, but I mean, if all our clients felt empowered to just come on and get started on their own, nothing would make us happier. So here are the actual consultant services. I'm certainly not going to walk through everything in detail. We support you in 3 key areas. We can support you by designing your challenge, a handful of marketing services, as well as judging support. And the other thing I'm going to mention really quickly as well is oftentimes clients will take a bit of a hybrid approach. They get started DIY, but then they might add on design, or they might add on some marketing services only if it's needed. We can certainly take that leadership approach and guide you in deciding what best meets your needs and your budget. So tying it all up, the HeroX advantages. So first of all, it's universal. It's a one-stop shop for a crowdsourcing platform, and the only place you can build and curate your very own crowd. It's open to everyone, regardless of formal credentials or expertise. You can be an MIT grad, or you could have a grade 4 education. It does not matter. It's open to everyone. It's results driven. You pay for success versus hoping for results. You have an engaged user base, one of the highest social media engagements across all our competitors. And as I mentioned, over 100,000 active heroes on the site looking for projects to be competing on. Global reach. I invite you to go back to the slide that I shared with you with all the different pins all over the world. Almost every country represented on the HeroX platform. Over 190 countries represented, including, believe it or not, North Korea, as well as Cuba as well. All right, so next steps. So on our end, we'll be sending you, as I mentioned, a follow-up email with a copy of the presentation, a link to the recording of today's webinar, as well as a link to, maybe a screencast of some additional successful case studies, as I mentioned. On your end, for next steps, identify a problem or a project that you want to crowdsource. Give some thought to maybe what a budget looks like. Start small. Doesn't have to be big and audacious. Start something simple. We actually had a client crowdsource redesigning their floor space. So they were looking to do some renovations and they wanted some ideas. on the best use of their floor space, and they got some really amazing ideas. We had another, myself personally, crowdsource, naming my webinar, and that was like only for $200. So, I mean, there's just so many different ideas. Think small and you can grow from there. And you know what, oftentimes during this presentation, clients have already identified a few different concepts. I mean, getting started is super simple. There's no cost to getting started. Get a draft started. See what it looks like. See how it starts to take shape. Or the other thing is you can reach out to me directly. I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions. We can also schedule in a complimentary challenge creation workshop with one of our expert designers. So let's talk a little bit about what that looks like. So our designers will support you in working through the problem that you've identified and support you in creating a challenge concept or an outline. The only prerequisite being that, we ask that you come prepared with, at least 1 to 2 challenge concepts, and as well as whatever budget that you have earmarked towards it. But listen, move at the pace that works for you, but do move forward. As you can see from the data, crowdsourcing is absolutely the future. And you could do nothing, but here's what happened to me when I did nothing. I didn't get LinkedIn when it first came out. I didn't get it for a few years, actually. I shifted companies a number of years back, and when I went to look for another position, all I heard was, hey, you know what, is your profile up to date on LinkedIn? You can actually apply for the job on LinkedIn. All of a sudden, I felt like I had fallen behind, that I hadn't kept up. You want to avoid that. Be in action, stay relevant, even if you run just a small challenge. Start building out your crowd today. And listen, brands have been doing it for years, from CocaCola to NFL to Land O'Lakes. It's just, again, it's the future. It's where the world is headed towards. All right, so that concludes our presentation portion for our webinar today. Thank you so very much for your attention. So if you haven't done so already, if you have any questions that have showed up for you, please drop it into the chat. I'll give you guys a couple of seconds to go through those. Okay, all right, we got a few rolling in here. Okay, so you mentioned do it yourself. Is your pricing listed somewhere on the website? Also, what's included with the DIY cost? Great question. And you know what I love to do is just, sometimes it's great just to take it out of the conceptual. So let me just take you onto the site itself. So when you actually are registered on our site, this is the view that you have. If you haven't registered, your view will look a little bit different. This is what my homepage looks like. So you go to the main menu over here, simply scroll down to pricing, and voila. So here is our pricing page. So it talks about the standard pricing, which is the DIY. Then it talks about custom pricing, which is basically the optional services that I talked about. And here are the percentages down here. So for a prize value that's up to $250,000, it's 18% of the prize value, and then you can see it trickles down from there. And down below here, we offer you an example of how the fee is actually calculated. Super simple. And as to what is included, as I mentioned, you have access. So you basically go here and you launch your challenge. You have a knowledge base. So it gives you all the different details available on here, from screencasts to templates. All of this is available for you. There's also a live chat. So if you have any questions as you're going through, we can absolutely support you with that as well. Another question. So how many ideas or what you refer to as submissions are enough? Great question. So, the interesting thing is that we actually haven't found there to be a correlation between the number of entries that are submitted and the quality. In other words, we've actually had some clients that had 15 submissions. And one might think only 15 ideas, that's not a lot of ideas. But the quality was so huge, they actually found it super difficult to select the top 5. We've had other cases where, clients have had, 150 submissions. But, they felt that the quality was like maybe 5 to 10. So, it really just depends. The goal isn't quantity, guys, it's quality. And, the other thing I'll say to you as well is all just really depends on how you phrase your challenge idea. Having a really good challenge idea is important, but designing it in such a way that it compels as many people to come compete is super critical, right? That's where you really ignite people, their interests. You drive them to want to come and actually compete. Let's see, we have time for maybe one more question. You didn't get into details on the actual platform. Is there another webinar? Absolutely. And I took a look actually just the other day. We don't have any immediate scheduled. However, I'm pleased to send you a recording to our last platform walkthrough. It was hosted by our webinar expert, Liz Treadwell. So we can certainly make that available. I'll ensure that it's sent in your follow-up email, John. But if there's anybody else that's interested, I can ensure it's included as well. Okay, we'll take maybe one more quick question here. How long should I run my challenge for? Really good question. So that typically depends on the type of challenge. If you're running something that's a simple ideation challenge, an ideation challenge meaning you're asking for the best idea, those typically are run for anywhere from 3 to 4 months. If you're looking for more of a technical solution, a prototype of some sorts, those can run for much longer, for a year, maybe a year and a half. It really just depends on how you've designed your challenge. And oftentimes those are designed in phases. The first phase is usually, submit your best ideas, and then you down select from there, and you award a certain number of prizes, and then, those who've actually been awarded go away and then create the prototype. So again, it really just depends, but ideation challenge is 3 to 4. And then anything beyond that, we can certainly support you depending on what it is that you're running your challenge on, and give you some insights there. Okay, so I think that's all the time we have for questions. We do have a few more in there. And for those questions that I wasn't able to get to, we'll make sure that we address those in a follow-up email. And, get those over to you. So on behalf of the HeroX team, thank you so very much for taking the time to join us today. As I mentioned at the start of the presentation, look forward to a follow-up email with the copy of the deck and the recording, etc. It's important to us that we deliver value. So if you have absolutely any insights on the content of this webinar or even some of the graphics, anything that you feel that we can improve upon, please don't hesitate to offer your insights in the follow-up survey. Once again, thanks so very much, and depending on where you are in the world, have an amazing morning, afternoon, or evening. Thanks, everyone.